little bit ago, Jan and I were having a conversation about elderhood and how the spiritual journey in the later years presents a super opportunity for you to work on your spiritual bucket list, for you to think about who am I called to be, not just being known, my identity is tied up in what I do, whether that's profession or raising kids or what have you. There's another program that you have had a lot of experience with, which is helping people with the spiritual practice. Ooh, there's a dove.
Hi there. Hi, Holy Spirit.
Hi,
A
Holy
little dove.
Spirit. Thanks for coming to visit. And that's very apropos, because part of what you're working on is the spiritual journey of helping people think about the end of their earthly life, the preparation for crossing over into the eternal life promised to us in Jesus Christ our Lord. A lot of us don't want to think about that. A lot of us are, la, 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 I'm not going to die. And then, or take me when I don't know about it, think about it. But you have a way of thinking about this as a spiritual practice, and you've got some materials. I'd love for you to kind of tell us how you think about helping people with the spiritual practice of thinking about the end of life.
Well, in my former life, I was a plan giving officer for Presbyterian Healthcare Foundation and the University of New Mexico School of Law. And in those roles, I had the great opportunity to talk with people about leaving a planned gift to an institution. And we know that when people leave a planned gift to one place, they usually leave it to 3 to 5. So I didn't see any difference in the church and had no compunction of saying, Michael, we need to talk about what legacy you want to leave to St. Mary's, how you want to continue your ethos in the St. Mary's congregation.
And just right there, that's a conversation a lot of clergy are afraid to have, because they're worried about being money grubbing, or they're worried about it's not all about the money. But the reality is our financial commitments are about the fruit of our labor. And people do want to have their life and their gift mean something, right? So you're offering an opportunity in a way.
Well, and the other thing I think that we who sit on this side of that tend to forget is that you have a need to give.
We're created, right? Part of being created in the image of God is, what is God but one who gives? Created this whole universe and the doves and the trees and the whole thing for us to enjoy. God is fundamentally creative, and that means God is fundamentally giving, right? So part of our being created in the image of God is that we are fundamentally givers.
Yeah, and the individual person's need to give is going to happen, whether it's $5 or $500,000. The money is not particularly, the amount is not particularly important, but giving you the opportunity to tell us what you want done with it when you're no longer here. Would you like it to continue your pledge for many years? Would you like it to go into the building or go into an outreach fund? Would you like it just to be left with a vestry to decide how they might need to spend it, whatever those needs might be that we can't see, that'll be 20 years from now?
Right.
All of those questions are intended to help somebody think about it. And then we can back off the money thing and talk about something more concrete, and that is their funeral plan. Now, I know you probably don't want to think about this, but I really need to know. I'd much rather have this conversation around this kitchen table or in this beautiful garden than to have it around your hospital table when you're not with it.
Yep.
Or
even worse, you
after
all of a sudden pass away, and
Yeah.
we're putting together what we think you might have liked instead of having the fondness of remembering. I remember when they chose that hymn and what it was about, right? So we can have that conversation so that we really know how to celebrate your life, because that's what we do at the end of life. We sing Hallelujah at the grave. We celebrate that life is changed but not ended. Yeah, so you've got some ways you frame that conversation.
Yeah, like, what's your favorite song?
Yeah.
I have a little book that I put together that, well, first of all, I have a check sheet. I'm a check sheet kind of gal.
I like that.
Because I'm getting old and I don't remember everything. So we basically put down basic demographic information. And then we just start talking about the parts of the liturgy and what's important to you. Do you have a favorite flower? What's your favorite psalm? Who do you want to read? And once we kind of think about that, then we can talk about what do you want them to read? And how do you want them to participate that way? So in order to facilitate that, especially with our older people, I put together a little notebook that has all the suggested Old Testament readings, New Testament, Psalms, Gospels, and then I just pulled and copied a bunch of hymns that we've used for funerals typically. Not all of them from our hymnal, but ones like In the Garden's in there, and people go, eck, but it is some that our people just cling to. My great-grandmother sang that to my grandmother sang that to my great-grandmother when she died. So that when we have those kinds of memories, we want to honor that. So we go through The Strife is Over, He is Risen, just some of the ones that we've used in the past to stimulate thinking.
That's super helpful, because not everybody reads music, first of all. And also, if you were to ask me, I know I have hymns that I love, but I can't pull them out of my brain like that, So having them in the booklet where we can, because I understand you take this booklet, you leave it with the person, you walk them through, here's the choices that you might consider. Think about it, and we'll talk again in a couple of weeks when you'd like to. Right. And it allows people at their own time, because contemplating our mortality is always a bit of a challenge. It's a spiritual practice, right? To kind of look death in the face, and it raises, how much do I believe in this resurrection thing? Do I really put my trust in Jesus? Like that's a hard thing. But it is a spiritual practice of acknowledging the preciousness of the life we've been given by thinking about what do we want that final remembrance of our life to be. And I think what I love about the way you do it is that it would also allow the family members to really know and appreciate why they're doing what they're doing. And that allows us to celebrate you even more.
I have a great story for you. One person I sat down to do this with said, just a minute. They got up and they ran in and they pulled out a file of old funeral bulletins where they had circled stuff that they liked.
I love it.
And I said, that's exactly what we're talking about.
I love it. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll turn to my husband and say, that's one of my favorite hymns. He said, Jan, every hymn is your favorite hymn. Could you write down 5 of them, please? So I think people have thought about it more than we acknowledge.
Because it comes to all of us. We'll have moments where we think about it and sometimes consciously push it away. I don't want to deal with that right now. But there's a spiritual practice of welcoming that contemplation. And even in our, if you're praying the daily office, which I hope everybody is, a lot of those prayers in Compline, I mean, the fact that we have the Nunc Dimittis in there in Compline every night, Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace. There's a great monastic tradition of remembering your death as a present reality. And that's a part of that prayer, is that as the sun is setting, we are contemplating, there will come a time when the sun is setting on my life. And I'm not sure I'm going to wake up in the morning anyway. So there's a sense in which there's an opportunity spiritually for us to live each day as if it were our last, if you will, by having each day be precious.
When I was actually doing my own, I thought, okay, what is it that I want to communicate? And I decided that I wanted the readings, the psalm, the hymns to be a sermon. This is what I want you to hear. And I was very, very particular with what I chose to put in there. So that whomever did the sermon had a lot of good fodder.
Well, and you bring up an important point, because the funeral service is for the people who are here, right? And so sometimes when I used to have these conversations with parishioners, sometimes I would encounter somebody who would say, oh, I don't care, they can figure it out. And they would say, oh, I don't know, they'll figure it out. There is a sense in which inviting that conversation ahead of time allows you to be in dialogue with the people, to say to them, this faith mattered to me and I want you to hear about it. There's a sense in which thinking about the people that will be in that room can be a very tender thing as
It's
well.
empowering their theology to come out in the lessons that they choose, the hymns that they choose, whatever they choose to do.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of fun, and I get all kinds of wonderful responses. I don't know that I've ever had anybody say, "Oh, I don't want to talk about that."
Usually they're thinking about it, as you said. They're
Yeah.
thinking about it on their own.
Yeah.
But having the church walk with you through this journey, that's what we're here for.
Exactly.
Every phase of life.
Exactly. So leading into that, what we're doing at St. Mary's for Lent is we're doing a program called Leave a Legacy. And we're taking it each Sunday in Lent, and we're talking about various things that happen in elderhood, and especially towards the end of life. The care plan, the do not resuscitate, do not intubate, the advanced directive. What's the difference between hospice, palliative care, and curative care? How does that all work together? Who should I do? What should I think about? So those kinds of things. And then we'll have legal considerations of what you need to put together. We're encouraging people to put it in a safe place, but to let somebody know where that safe place is and give them a key.
Right, because it is such a gift for people. I've again walked with, as you have, I know, many families who suddenly their loved one is at death's door and they don't know what to do, and they haven't had the conversation. And that can be anguish for the family members or your loved ones at that point. Whereas if you can have the conversation, first of all, think about it yourself. What do I want it to look like in a variety of scenarios? And who do I want to make those decisions when I'm not able to make decisions for myself? And then to communicate with those folks and give them the key to the safe deposit box where the plan is, right? Or have it, easy to hand with copies that they have, you know, so that when they show up at the hospital, here's the document. That can be super helpful.
Like, for example, most people don't know that EMS, emergency medical people, will look on your refrigerator and on your door for an advanced directive. And if it's there, then they are, by law, must follow it.
They'll take it. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a lot of people wouldn't know that, right? Just have an envelope on your fridge. That'll help you remember as well as you go to eat the food for today. You'll remember that it's there.
So we're doing 6 sessions, one each Sunday in Lent, to help people look at how to deal with estates and estates.
Walk us through each of the sessions just to tell us what you're planning, because we're going to try to steal this for the diocese too. I think it's a great way you've organized it.
Well, session 1 is medical and spiritual concerns. Session 2 is legal considerations and estate planning. What is a will? What is a trust? I've already got my will. How can I amend it? A simple codicil, how to do that. It can be very easy. You don't have to make this complicated.
Yep, and it's important to know you're bringing in speakers who have expertise in the area. This isn't free legal advice, and we're not going to do your will in that way. But I think a lot of people don't even know what the terms are or how to begin or where to go. So this is really helpful, kind of saying, if you've taken care of each of these 6 items, thought about each of these 6 sets of issues, then you're good.
Absolutely. The third one is financial considerations and estate planning, and that's how to deal with retirement accounts, liquid assets, any kind of other kinds of assets that you might have, and what's the way to deal with that so that it can be easily transferable and won't cost your heirs.
That the taxes won't eat up large percentages of it.
And why you want to do a will, because if you die intestate, 80% of it's going to go to the state. Is that what you want?
Right. And most people would say absolutely not.
Maybe
well,
not.
Then let's take the
step to do that. Then we're talking about probate. What happens after somebody dies, and how do you probate if you haven't had a trust document so it just flows? But if you have to probate a will, or when do you, at what level do you, which is about $50,000. Under $50,000, you don't have to probate.
Okay, that's the total value of the estate.
Right, and how to do that. And then we have a practical session where I'm going to hand out the funeral forms. Great. And everybody's going to sit there and going to fiddle around with them, and we're going to answer questions and talk about all that kind of stuff as a work session.
That's marvelous. That's marvelous. These are things that we should all, kind of suck it up and embrace. This is about our life. It's about what a life has meant to me, and what I want to say to my loved ones about my life. And it creates so many opportunities for intimacy, opportunities for us to have conversations that we don't want to miss. So
We don't want to miss.
it's just wonderful ministry that you're doing, Jan. Thank you.
It just comes back so much and so easy. And once people have made the decision to include the church in their will or their estate plan, they have a higher stake in seeing where things are going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they know that they're attached now.
Yeah,
in
and
a different way.
committed to this community in a
Mhm.
different kind of way.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So God bless them. We have some wonderful people here who've left some money from their wills and estates. It's allowing us to keep this older facility going and
Yep.
getting it spiffied up from time to time.
Yep. And we have literally, no matter what church you're in, we have all inherited the church that we have from those that have gone before. And they treasured it and they loved it and they put a new roof on it and they got a new boiler for it and they fixed the parking lot and they provided for the clergy and they provided for the administrator and they provided for the music. We have an opportunity in our day to make sure that this church that we love continues into the next generation and the generation after that. And one of the things we know is that the younger folks, they tend to not attend church in as many numbers and they're not able to pay as much in terms of pledging. And that has a lot to do with the way retirement planning is done in professions now. People do not have defined benefit retirement. Their 401k is their vehicle to save. They know that every dollar I put into the church plate literally is a dollar I might need in later life. So there's the different kind of calculation than there was before. Same thing with the cost of healthcare. Used to be that if you had a stable job, you also had health care for your family and it was reasonably priced. Now, even if you've got a great healthcare plan, a hospital stay could blow your budget for a long period of time. So people are not able to give in the same way that they used to. So those that have the opportunity to help set up the church for the next generation, I'm really grateful if and when they do that.
Well, I'm going to take it a step forward based on where we're going in the diocese. And that is not only for St. Mary's as an institution, but for the diocesan program to get it forward, because the funds coming into the diocese are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, we know. So endowing some things in the diocese, I'll talk to people about, think of St. Mary's, but you person have been very active in diocesan work. Don't forget to include the diocese in some of that too.
Yeah, it is true that our diocese does not have large endowments. I mean, I think a lot of people have moved here from other places where their diocese may have an endowment of $50 million or $20 million or whatever. Ours is 3 total for the whole diocese and is looking after 50 churches. So there is a real need there in terms of the very existence of the Episcopal Church in New Mexico and far West Texas and what that will actually look like. We need some help with that. It's not set. And so that's where I'd love for the Episcopalians in the diocese to really know and be aware that the church is not set it and forget it. It'll always be here. We are at an inflection point where it may not. And so as people are thinking about what they love and the spiritual journey, my hope is that the Episcopal Church has given many gifts to people and that they would like for those gifts to cascade into the next generation so that this church is still there for their grandchildren.
Well, and I appreciate what you've always said is that from the diocesan level, you have to look after the church in Tucumcari. It is the only Episcopal church within a huge, almost 2.5 hour radius for anybody to go to church. We need that Episcopal church in Tucumcari, New Mexico, and that's just one example.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Yeah, we have a wonderful senior warden there who's about in her early 30s. She has a young infant daughter, and the church in Tucumcari cannot afford their own priest. So there are clergy that are driving sometimes 4 hours or more to get there so that they can have a Eucharist. They're a dedicated community there in Tucumcari. And like you say, you got to go 2.5 hours to get to the next place where if you're divorced, you can have your child baptized. Or if you are looking for the message of the loving God that we preach in the Episcopal Church, you got to go 2.5 hours to hear that. And there are other congregations. I was with one last week where it's a university town in New Mexico, there is a Roman church. There's a lot of non-denominational churches, but the Presbyterian church is closed. The Methodist church is having an issue right now and is really in decline. The Episcopal church is the only mainline denomination. There's no Lutheran church. There's no Presbyterian church.
No
The Methodist church is struggling because of what's going on in Methodism right now. And the Episcopal church is the place. So that is an important gift that we can be to continue the Episcopal church and make sure it's here. So as people are thinking about the spiritual journey and the importance of the church in nurturing their faith, we're going to be inviting everybody in the diocese to think through this as a spiritual practice, and to think about how important it is that others have made sure there were bishops who rode out here on horseback and by train,
right.
which then has led to the diocese that we have right now. There will be church buildings that come and go, as they have since the beginning of time, but the diocese is the unit where we all have a place at the table. And the diocese is the unit that makes sure Tucumcari still has a church, Deming still has a church, Gallup still has a church, Fort Stockton still has a church. That breadth is not just in the big churches in the urban areas, but it's also true that you have confirmands and priests at the big churches because of the legacy that others have given. And we have an opportunity in our day to continue that legacy. So Jan, thank you so much for all you're doing, and for the clarity with which and the courage with which you're helping people have the conversations that we know are on their hearts. They're talking in other places, but to talk about it in the church makes it so special, and it's so important.
Thank you. Welcome.